Good evening and welcome to Between the Lanes, episode number 114. I'm Ron.
I'm Shane.
And I'm Walker.
Walker's back. Walker's back from England. Team USA in the house. We're going to be talking about some ISRA stuff here in a little bit. Again, welcome Between the Lanes, episode number 114. You can find us on YouTube. The channel is Slot Racer. Find us on Facebook. Between the Lanes is the the page. And we have some race results. We got quite a few race results. And the winning report, we will start with the 2019 ISRA Worlds that was held in Corby, England. And last week we talked about production results and Euro 32, and I think maybe we got up to F1, but I'm not 100% sure. And then they still had to run 24th Eurosport as the week finished out. So we talked about the disqualification last week, and we'll go in more detail on that here in a little bit. So after the disqualifications took place, there was 3 teams disqualified. The 124th production results were Boudreaux and Jonathan Forsyth winning, Castroconi and Sobrana in second, Zimlicka, I don't know. How do you say that? Do you know, Walker? You were
Zimlicki. I like that.
I have no clue.
And Flazig were the third place team. And you can see the other place teams. And there is half of the winning production 124th team. That's Jonathan Forsyth. That's like the before picture.
Yeah.
And then there's the after picture. And sometimes I think he's trying to go back to his young, boyish, childish looks there on the left. The young Jonathan Forsyth.
So he's not that old, really. There's only probably 10 years difference from that picture and now.
Well, I don't know how he is now, but
I think he's in his 20s.
Yeah, he's in his 20s.
there could be 15 years difference maybe, but
right.
Because I don't exactly remember how old Jonathan was in that picture, but and to his right is Alex,
right,
Freen, who races out at Buena Park, mainly retro stuff these days. So yeah, this was back probably in I'm going to say around 2001, 2002 maybe, somewhere in that time frame. So 17 years ago. So yeah. So if Jonathan's 27, he was 10.
Yeah. That sounds accurate.
132nd Eurosport, Ross Grogan was the winner. Mr. Boudreaux was second. James Cleve was third. And there is the picture of Ross Grogan. We had that on the show last week. And then 132nd F1, Travis Janssens was your winner. Boudreaux was second. And Ali, how do you say his last name, Walker, you know?
Kentama,
there we go, was third. And 120, and there is a picture of Ravis. And then 124th Eurosport, Anton pulled off the last few second win.
Tonda.
So did he pass him with 30 seconds to go, 15 seconds to go, 10 seconds to go?
It was like 30 seconds left. So basically the last heat, it was around like a half a lap difference, but the gutters were way faster than the middle lanes at that time.
Right.
And so like Tonda was in black, and then
Brino?
Brino, we called him Chihuahua a lot, but Brino
Brino,
he was in blue, I believe. No, orange. He was in orange.
Okay.
So orange was the worst lane on the track at that time. So he was around 0.3 slower than Tonda. But Tonda came off like 3 times that heat in the beginning in the triangle.
Right.
And so Chihuahua was like 1.5 laps up. But then Tonda just pulled it in. Then whenever he was like half a lap back, Chihuahua fell off. And then they were neck and neck, and then Tonda just had the outright pace to get by him and win.
Okay.
Drop the hammer.
Martins Renikovs, I believe is how I'm going to say that, was third.
Yeah, Yeah.
Boudreaux's was fourth.
There was drama. There was some serious drama in this.
Well, tell us about the serious drama, because
We're all about the drama.
didn't Jonathan's body get sucked by a marshal or a hand or something?
Yes. So Negrello, I don't know how to say his name. Negrello.
The guy in 8th place?
He was winning. He was leading in the second heat. It was second or third heat.
Okay.
And he had an issue, so they pulled his car off at the pit area and worked on it and fixed it and put his car back down. And whenever they put it down, whoever put it down's hand hit Jonathan's body, and it sucked his body into the gear, and Jonathan's car went like flying.
Right.
And so everybody started yelling track, and then the race director like got down, talked to a couple of people around the area, and gave Negrello a 10-lap penalty.
Correct.
But then like we thought like, okay, Jonathan will be fine. We all of the USA guys that were still there were kind of huddled up in one little area at the triangle where the pit area was. So Wes got a body ready just in case we needed it. Well, then after like 3 laps, Jonathan's gear stripped, so he had to pull his car and change his gear, and he lost 10 laps. So, and then whenever he changed his gear, because the gears are glued on, the tire was glued on, he just swapped tires.
Mm-hmm.
So he put on tall tires after like 2.5 heats. So he lost a good bit of time, plus he was pissed off, so he came off a few times.
Right.
So we all speculate that he would have won the race because he's 10 laps down.
Right.
Had that not happened.
Okay. But we will never know for sure.
But no, Tonda just had to win the damn race again.
That's all right. I think that's his third 24th title
In a row.
in a row.
Maybe fourth. I don't know.
Oh, wait a minute. There we go. There's your 2019 ISRA World Champion 124th Eurosport Tonda. So then, of course,
Wankings.
what?
It's the Wankings.
The Wankings. Okay. So as the race went on, and Boudreaux's had a very excellent world championship across all 4 classes. He is now the new number one ranked ISRA driver. And maybe hard to tell on the screen, but over here on the left side, it shows the rank going into the race. So like Recheck was first, Horky was second, Anton was third, Ali was fourth, Boudreaux's was fifth. And then over here in the green is their new ranking. Boudreaux's went to first, Recheck went to second, Horky went to third, Anton went to fourth. I guess Ali went to fifth.
Yeah.
Hard to tell in that deal. And then this column, which shows you how many spots they dropped or they gained. Green, of course, they gained. Red, they dropped. So Dominic, or is it Dominic Boudreaux's or
Dominicus?
Okay, Dominicus Boudreaux's moved up 4 spots.
Yep.
And so did I can't tell who that is down there. Castriconi moved up 4.
Yeah, Piero went up 4. Alexander Leite went up 3, and Rivas went up 4 because he won.
Yeah, I can see if I do that.
He won F1.
And then it shows how many points they dropped because everyone had to drop their 2016 totals.
Look at how many points Recheck dropped.
Oh, yeah, Recheck
and Horky dropped. Look at that.
Right. Yeah, Recheck dropped 899 points compared to
Dominicus dropped nothing.
247, right. Yeah, he picked up
a ton more.
600 almost 50 points just through drops. So, and they just count your last 3 years for the points. So there you have it. So your new number one is Mr. Boudreaux's, and he was
with his signature hat.
And he was Jonathan's partner in the 124th production victory.
World
So,
champions 2 years in a row in production.
as seen in a supermarket somewhere in the UK, was Brian Boots Canuti. I think we're going to call him Booty Canuti from now on, which is BK, Booty Canuti. I just thought that when I seen that on Facebook, I was rolling. Like,
You know, the thing is, so he told me that the boots were for if there was a green track. Well, then he should have wore his boots every day because whenever the track was really slick, he needed the extra grip. So he should have wore his boots.
and then there's a picture of him standing out in front of a store that's like Boots.
Yeah.
And he wasn't wearing his boots in front of the boot store.
That's what I'm saying. He
was wearing his trainers. He was wearing his trainers. And then, of course, the unidentified slot racer, Tracy Chen, was seen roaming around in his...
Yeah, I asked about that. Apparently, there was people there sick.
There was a bunch of people coughing. So
I thought it was like a man burqa, like thought he was starting a new fashion trend.
Nah, it was one of those sickness masks.
And then I'm like, what? It says slot. Is it like slot nut that we can't read, but it's slot house? So
yeah, slot house. Yeah, he brought a ton of merchandise and stuff with him.
Okay.
And had like a rack of everything.
So Paul Goronsky was probably the most consistent American when it came to making all the semis.
Deep concentration right there. I've seen that look before.
Yeah, and I think he kind of finished almost in the top 12 in all four classes. Or he was definitely in the top 16 in all four classes.
I don't remember where he finished in.
He qualified into all the semis and so he was the most consistent American when it came to that. I mean, okay, so he qualified in the top 16 in all classes. Was the only American to make all the semis and top 24 in all the classes.
Yeah.
And then in the Eurosport 32nd, you had Paul, Casey Scott, Jonathan Forsythe, and Justin Colvin in the semis. 32nd F1. I guess you had Paul, Jonathan. No, just Paul. And then 24th Eurosport, Jonathan, Paul, and Chris Radishish. I don't know if we consider him an American or not because they consider him New Zealand over there. Because he lives here, and those were the only three from...
He sat with us.
3 American residents who made the semis in 24th Eurosport. Because, see, last week we was kind of trying to determine if we should consider Gugu half American because his time here, so...
He's half American.
He's got the shirt now, so it's official.
He's got the Team USA shirt, so he's American.
And, of course, there's the famous body Christmas tree. That's what I'm going to call it, the Christmas tree. But
mine's on the other side. This side doesn't matter.
Okay, well, I seen different, but this was kind of like the best picture to show.
Yeah.
So everybody, well, I don't know if everybody, but a lot of racers would hang up their trashed body. What happened to these bodies when it was all said and done? Did they wind up in a trash can somewhere, or did
No, I believe Woody kept them, or
Okay.
Gavin kept them, or something.
Okay, I wonder if someone would keep them for posterity.
One of the organizers did.
Cool. So how many bodies do you think was hung on there by the end of the week?
I'd say probably 50.
Okay.
There was a lot, at least 50, probably more.
Okay.
I only had one on that pole because, I threw them away instead of putting them up there. I had to hide the fact that I was going through bodies.
Oh. How many bodies did you go through?
Well, I had 5 124th Eurosport bodies, and I went through all of them. So I had to buy 3 more bodies from Tom Adams to race with.
Good thing Tom came and brought you bodies.
Yeah. I told him earlier in the week, I was like, I might need these bodies because I only have 2 more 124th bodies left. And then right before he left, I said, how much for these bodies? I'm out of bodies.
So ISRA Hall of Fame inductees was Mark Harrison from the UK, which I think was only fitting that he got inducted when the race was there. And Mark was a force to be reckoned with in the early years of ISRA, and back in the 80s and early 90s Eurosport scene. And then, of course, George Kimber was inducted. George has been on the show before. That's a pretty interesting show to go watch if you haven't watched it. And Charlie Gooding, who was the early chairman, organizer of ISRA in the beginning in 1993, he was inducted. And I don't know who the other inductees were, if there were more or not, but
there were more.
Okay. I just didn't see any, didn't catch them on Facebook, as they say, or anywhere.
James Cleave was inducted.
James Cleave, okay.
And who was the other one? He wasn't inducted at the ceremony. I'm trying to remember. He was a God. What was his name? The thing is I know who he is, but I can't remember because I have a bad memory. Brian Saunders. That's who.
Brian Saunders.
He got inducted. Yeah.
Okay. And that was it?
As far as I can remember.
Okay. So, what was I going to say? I don't remember what I was going to say. So, I don't want to do that yet. So,
Jesus, that was good.
So, someone asked me, someone sent in a question. They said, "Well, who has been all the past U.S. delegates to ISRA?" And I said, "Well, Jan Limpak was the first U.S. delegate, and Jan was at the first. He was in Siska Lispa in 1993, and that's where ISRA was kind of formed. And then Jan was the U.S. delegate, and he was the 1994 Eurosport 124 champion. So he was the first U.S. driver to win a ISRA championship, and in the first year of ISRA, technically. So he was the first delegate, and then in 1999, when we had the Worlds in Toronto, I'm sitting in the bar with Dan Miller of PK and somebody else, and Charlie Gooding comes up and says, "Ron, we want you to be the U.S. delegate for ISRA." I'm like, okay. So, because Limpak never went to any races after the 94 race, and ISRA wasn't as organized, let's say, as it is today. Like, there was years they would not have meetings or whatever. They didn't need delegates, or if a delegate was missing, it was no big deal. So I was the delegate for a couple of years. Well, I was a delegate until 2002. And at the same time, they said, "Well, we want you to be a delegate. Oh, by the way, you need to host the 2002 ISRA Worlds in the United States." So we had that race, and after that, I believe we had a meeting. I think that was the only ISRA meeting I ever went to, was in 2002. And then I kind of like turned everything over to Lou Piro, but I think Goronsky was kind of the fill-in delegate until Roger Schmidt became the delegate at some point. And Roger was a delegate for probably, I'm going to say probably almost 10 years. 8 to 10 years, and then Jonathan has been the U.S. delegate for the last year, and he's the current U.S. delegate. So, and then the past ISRA Team USA World Champions, of course, Paul Goronsky's won 4 titles. Tracy Chen was a co-champion with Paul in a team production championship. Jonathan Forsythe now has 3 team production championships. One was with his first was with Greg Gilbert, and the last 2 have been with Boudreaux's. And Greg Gilbert also has won 132nd Eurosport ISRA World Championship. And, of course, Jan Limpak has the 1994 Eurosport 24th ISRA champion. So, from the United States, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drivers have been ISRA World Champions. So, congrats to them. And Good luck in the future to our current Team USA. And in the 2021 World Championships will be held in the United States. Mike Isles will be hosting that event, Atlantic City, New Jersey. And next year is in Latvia, correct?
Mm-hmm. Latvia.
So Latvia, and then it comes to the U.S. in 2021. So I think I've covered all my ISRA notes. And
if you don't come to ISRA in 2021, you're not American.
well, that's if you can get in.
Oh, you can get in production. Then you can hang out at Atlantic City and gamble for the rest of the time.
There you go. So, time for me to fly, Eric Shirey. Now we get into the regular race results. Penn, Ohio was at Fast Tracks in Newark, Ohio this last weekend, and we ran the retro cars. And then Can-Am, Greg Mayer was your winner. Greg Fox second, Ron Hirschman in third. Formula One, Eric Shirey was the winner. Greg Fox was second. I was third. And then stock car, this is the overall. Eric Shirey was the winner. Mike Muir was second. And Jeremy Dennis was third in the stock car class on the oval. We ran the other two classes on the American Black. And then Florida Slot Car Series was at the raceway.biz. This would be stock car. First was Dale King, second Aaron Rothstein, and third Dennis DeMole. Aaron won the LMP race. Terry Tawney was second, and Dennis was third. And then DTM, Aaron was the winner, Marcus Ramos second, and Dennis third. I think Dennis had like a sweep of third place. Look at that. Yes, he did.
He didn't even move. He just stood there the whole time.
Don't. Oh, I went too far. Don't. Okay, so the Mid-America Hardbody Series had their Super Stock 1000 Nats at Mid-America Naperville. And in the hobby stock class, they ran down the oval. Fred Fowler was your winner. Dave Goss was second. Eugene Richardson was third. And then in Super Stock on the LTD, Brian Meharry was the winner. Neil Eisler second. Rick Stagan third. And then Pony Stock on the LTD. Neil Eisler was the winner. Brian was second. And Rick was third. So Rick was standing in that same spot, too, for those last two podiums there, Walker.
Paul Sign's still there.
Paul's sign is still taped to the wall. You are correct.
Yes, it is.
The Mid-South was at Uncle Charlie's in North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. And in the stock, this is the scale class. Bobby Beachman was your winner. Shane was second, and Russ Martin was third. In GTP, Bobby was the winner. Shane was second. Russ was third. Notice how they all stood in the same spot there again, Walker?
Yeah, I know. It's weird. It's like they didn't even race. You should have let Timmy get on the podium or something so it could sprinkle in a little bit of spice.
So then in stock car, they switched it up because Shane won the stock car race. Bobby was second. Russ was third. And then LMP, they stood in the same spot again. Shane was the winner. Bobby was second. And Russ was third.
Poor Russell.
What's Russ doing? Was he wanting paid or something or what?
He had third locked down.
I mean, he's got his hand out like, pay me or something.
He's just disappointed.
Okay. SCRRA was out at Buena Park Raceway. Can-Am, Mill Conroy the winner, Brian Warmack second, Gary Donahoe in third. In the F1 race, Dale Yamashita was the winner, Mill Conroy second, Brian Warmack was third. And winner, chicken dinner. And Walker, now that you're back.
Sunday.
There you go, baby. All right, so it is the weekend of the 19th. We've got Yuska at Pro Slot Buckeye Retro Series at Downriver. F2000 at Lucky Bob's, the Midwest Spec Series. I can't tell you where they're at, but they're starting off their series this weekend. Next weekend, the 26th, we got OCC at Washington, Gator Retro Racing at P1, Penn Jersey at Trains and Lanes, and at Dallas Slot Cars, we have the annual Texas Two-Step Retro Race. And then November 2nd, we have the FK Flexi Fiesta. More on that here in a little bit. The weekend of the 9th, we've got Midwest Spec Series, the Fall Brawl at Speed Zone, Florida Slot Car Series at P1, Buckeye Retro Series at HMS on the Orange Track. I got to back up to the weekend of the 2nd. On the 3rd, the Ohio Oval Series starts off their new series at Fast Tracks. And then we're going to go up to November 16th weekend. We got F2000 at Alpha, Gator Retro Racing Region in action, USCA Nationals at Mid-America Bloomington, and we got Penn Jersey at, I think, Speed Zone. And then Penn, Ohio is at Washington. So that's what's coming up the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. We had a couple of losses this week in the slot racing world. Tim Wiggin there on the left holding the trophy. He's been racing in the New England Retro Racing group last year or two. He'd been ill for a while. He passed away the last week. I knew Timmy from 20 years ago. Timmy used to race a lot of Eurosport stuff. He used to race up at Lou Piero's, and I want to say Timmy might have raced at the 99 Worlds in Toronto, the ISRA Worlds when we had him up in Toronto. And he went to a lot of USRA Nats and stuff, and he is sorely missed and will be missed. And in the drag racing slot side of the world, Tim Crosland passed away this week, kind of unexpectedly. But he passed away, and we wish their families well and prayers out to them. And that's kind of all I got for this portion before we start as the guide flag turns. Meow, meow, meow. So, stop that. All right, so I don't know where to start. Let's just start with the Flexi Flats. So anybody that is on Facebook and been following along, last night the announcement was made that the Flexi Flats race, November 2nd, would be canceled. And I guess we can say it was canceled, but today it was kind of revived, and it's got a name change. It's going to still be at Mid-America, Naperville, November 1st and 2nd. Format, rules, the handout motors, tires, bodies will all be the same that they were going to be for this race. Ernie Mazzetti was the promoter of the Flexi Flats. Him and Roger had a disagreement, and then one thing led to another. Unfortunately, the race is still on. I don't think Ernie will be there, but at the same time, the race is going to go on. Ernie has refunded money to the people that paid for Flexi Flats. And I guess now you will show up and pay your entry fees at the race, because I don't think Roger's doing a pre-entry thing. I mean, there's really no sense in that. I think if guys were going to go to the race, I think they're still going to go to the race. So, maybe we'll lose one or two. I don't know, but I don't think so. So I think we're looking around 30 entries, 30, 32 entries. But you can still go to the race if you want to. And I would say that if you're going to go to the race, you will need to get your handout bodies. So you need to contact Roger at Mid-America and get your bodies sent to you so you can get them painted, or You can pick them up there and paint them in the parking lot. So
Spray bomb them, baby.
spray bomb them, baby. So, you got anything to say, Shane? Or
Not really. I've been refunded. I went back and forth. I'm going, I'm not going. And then basically, I have airfare. Ernie offered to pay for the airfare.
right?
And I told him that I was still going to go. He said, okay. And I mean, yeah. You know.
I mean, Ernie's a stand-up guy. I mean, he's refunded everybody's money, and he offered to refund anybody's airfare
And hotel.
I guess, yeah. If anybody
And
prepaid for anything and they weren't going to go.
Yep.
But again, I think it's an unfortunate situation, and I did not want to see it happen. I didn't want it to happen, but
right.
And I'm going to miss Ernie being there if he doesn't come. But at the same time, it's still kind of like the same event. You know what I mean? I mean, it's got a little bit of a name change, but
right.
We were going there to race Flexi cars on a flat track with handout motors and tires and bodies, just like we did when we went to Walker's last November and did the same thing. And
right.
I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be a good time, and it's going to be good racing. And like
Weather
I said last week,
nice.
Said
weather should be nice.
Weather should be decent. Like I said last week's show, I talked about the enduro race the week before, and the track was in great shape, and we all had a great time there, and a lot of good racing there. So I expect the same to take place in 2 weeks from now. So
hopefully you don't have Great Britain weather. Better pray. No rain.
I think
cold.
When I was there in '97, I mean, it was kind of chilly, but I think it was sunny the whole week. I don't remember any rain at all.
It rained every day.
You'll find the cold because it's still
and
hot down here. We're just now getting cooled off down here, but tomorrow it'll be 90 degrees again.
Raining, cold, and windy every day.
I think it was like 55 today, and we're going to be 75 this weekend. I mean, it's that time of year. Yeah. Yesterday it was 75, and today it was 55, and it's cold. It's England weather here, except no rain.
Yeah.
Cold and breezy.
Except we didn't get to the 75. We were at
gloomy.
It was going down to 35 at night and then getting up to around 55 in the middle of the day.
Gotcha.
With rain all day. So it was nice and cold.
It was soggy.
Yes.
It was soggy. All right. So last week on the show, we talked about the disqualification at the ISRA Worlds. And since that show, I talked to Mr. Cleve. I didn't realize it was, but I talked to him for an hour and 20 minutes. And, we didn't talk about the whole DQ for an hour and 20 minutes. I mean, he talked about, and we'll get into this with Walker, I guess, in a little bit here after we get done with this. But we talked about track conditions because, he had raced on the track before at warm-up races, and was the track different when they moved it? And he said no, but the big problem is always at ISRA races, and like Walker already alluded to in the 24th main, orange is the worst lane on the track because everybody qualifies on it. So it's got an extra 2.5 hours of running time on it, basically, by the time you start the first race. So that lane is overly rubbered compared to the rest of them.
Well broken.
In the race. So we talked about that a little bit. But so anyway, James Cleve got disqualified for, I guess I'm going to call it modification of chassis, because there was a lot of modification of chassis going on in the pits when everybody got their chassis. Look at Walker's eyes. He's like, banging.
I had nightmares about all that.
I guess we should start. The rules say that no polishing, no grinding, and then there's the list of what you can do. Like you can add tape to the chassis, you can solder your oil lights in, you can add lead, you can add pin tubes. I think that's like the only allowed modifications to the chassis. And
tape, lead, pin tubes,
soldering your oil lights.
Yeah, and soldering things.
So
the motor and oil lights. That's
right.
about it.
So everybody gets their chassis and they start banging on them and pounding on them and rebending things and moving. When I say moving, I guess tweaking. You're not moving something from
Forming.
here. Yeah, reforming, shaping, loosening, tightening.
Doing what they want to.
Right, and technically, the way the rules would be, that's not allowed because that's not listed as anything you're allowed to do. But you got to have common sense too. I mean, you can't get a chassis that's twisted and expect to race that. I mean, you should be allowed to flatten it and bend it and stuff. But you're not supposed to grind them. And as we showed on the show last week, James was videotaped running a grinding apparatus through his J-bar holes in the pan of his chassis. And, the questions I had was, okay, if they caught him doing that, so basically they caught him on videotape doing this, and then they turned that into the technical crew group, whatever you want to call them. Department. James was approached then by Graham Woodward, who was the chief technical inspector, or he's the head tech guy. I don't know what his proper name is in the rule book, but
we'll call him Chief.
Yeah, so Chief Woodward came over and questioned James about it, and then took the chassis, inspected the chassis, and said, looked up in the holes and said, "You're okay. You're good." And that's why James didn't take another chassis, because he just said this chassis is okay.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and use this chassis. So they finish the car, practice, whatever, and then they take the car to inspection, which I'm thinking, if this car's been ground on and that's a violation of the rules, why would you allow the car in tech? But the head tech guys already looked at it and said, here it is, proceed. Boom, it goes into tech and goes into the race. So they run the race. James and Gavin win the race. And of course, I don't know how many people in the room were upset versus those who didn't care, but they all knew that he got caught grinding on this chassis, and that's not allowed by the rules. So a protest is filed, but then the protest was filed too late because they have a rule that you have to file a protest within 5 minutes of the finish of the race. And it was filed a little later than that, so the protest is denied because it wasn't filed in time. All right, go on.
So the funny part about that is that they had asked Dominicus is the one that did the protest, and he had asked somebody from tech how long he had to do a protest, and he was told 20 minutes.
Oh.
So then they got together, a bunch of guys got together, figured out how they wanted to file the protest, and went and filed the protest. And then away they went for 3 hours, and then they came back and said that, or no, the next morning they said that the protest was filed too late.
Right. Because James said that night they went and read the rule book and realized that there's a rule that says the protest has to be filed within 5 minutes after the conclusion of the race. So the protest was protested and then denied.
Yes.
So okay, go ahead.
That wasn't the end of the saga.
No, that was the beginning. That was opening a can of worms. So
that was chapter 1.
Yeah.
They've got 26 chapters.
So we'll back up, because last week on the show I said, well, I don't know why James would be opening the holes unless he was trying to get more movement or tighten the movement somewhat, because I didn't know on the show last week that you guys had to run the J bars that were supplied.
Yes.
I thought you guys were allowed to run different size J bars.
No, you have to run the stock J bars.
Okay. So you had to run the J bars they gave you with the chassis, and the J bars were marked with some kind of invisible ink or something, so that you guys didn't change out the J bars or grind on them. So that's another thing. The rule I don't think the rule says
Can't
But
grind
it's right,
on
say
J-bars.
you shouldn't be able to modify or grind on J bars. But if it doesn't, it should. That's all.
They
Well,
classified
now, way to
it
go,
as
Ron.
they classified it as just another chassis piece that can't be modified.
Okay.
Basically,
And that's
same as like the motor mount bracket. Same thing. You can't modify that.
okay. So then it was after the protest was denied. Well, the cars still have to pass post-race tech, meaning the cars have to pass tech after. Now, I don't know what they're looking for in post-race tech, because if you tech your car in, it's impounded the entire time until you race it. And you can't, like, in between heats, go over there and start grinding on your car, because there's no time to, and you're not allowed to. Like, it's not like you have a 3-minute lane change, go over, pop your body off, pull your J-bar off, grind some holes out, put it back in. You can't do that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're looking for post-race tech.
Well,
other than maybe a piece of tape added to the bottom of the chassis, which isn't allowed, or somebody riding their rear track out, which, again, no tools on the lane changes, right?
Yeah, you'd have to do it mid-race. And if you did it mid-race, they would, next available track call, they would stop and check it.
So here's a question I have, because I didn't ask James this, and it just dawned on me. Was they changing tires in the production races?
No.
No, okay. So guys didn't have the cars in their hands except for lane changes.
Yeah, unless you had to, like, fix your braids or something.
Stop and pick your car up and fix it under the green, right?
Yeah. Okay. But so this is what they checked. They didn't check it the night of the race. They checked it the next day.
Right.
The night of the race, they were talking about the protests and everything.
The post-race tech took place the next day.
Yes.
Right.
So what they did is they went through all 80 cars and made sure the gears weren't glued on, because that's illegal.
Okay.
So they went through all 80 cars and disassembled the rear axles to make sure the gears would come off.
Okay.
And then it's just like I was told, somebody, Chris Radisich told me that they had planned to make tech harder, post-race tech harder, because they were suspecting a couple of people doing things.
Right.
And so they wanted to make post-race tech harder. He said he didn't want it to be 5 days long, but he wanted it to be harder. And so they went through, like, made sure none of the gears were glued on. And then they started inspecting chassis.
Right.
And then that's whenever the whole 1 week saga commenced.
So my question is, I would think you would just loosen a set screw in a gear and spin the axle.
Yeah,
versus taking the whole thing apart. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, but I mean, hey.
And if you get one that sticks, then you can say, all right, let's pull this apart. But
yeah, I mean, what they did was, like, I believe they pulled off the gear side tire.
There you go.
Loosened up the gear and then pulled out the axle and put it back in and tightened everything back up.
Changes did it in 3 seconds or less.
Yeah.
So another car. I
have another question on that. In the production class, you have to run a 3/32 axle?
Yes.
Okay. So they got to look for 2mm axle also, but I'm sure they do that when you tech in anyway. So well, and that's another problem too. Even if you tried running a 2mm axle, your handout tires isn't going to work on.
Yeah, but so tech.
Here we go.
So as you know, tech. I don't know how long they've been doing it, so I don't know if you know or not. But tech is done by people who were assigned to do tech, random.
Yes,
people,
I was told
random
that.
racers.
Right.
So for production, they actually had a decent amount of guys up there. One guy checking everything. There was one checking height, one checking track width, one checking for all the markings on the chassis and the motor, and then one.
Was the chassis engraved or laser engraved?
Laser.
Okay. Carry on.
And then one was checking rear wing height, and then one was checking for numbers and wheel stickers, and then in the interior, and then they.
You mean you can't paint your wheel stickers on?
You can't paint your wheel stickers on.
It's a joke. No. Just carry on. All right.
So, but that's all that they checked, and so they didn't. I mean, honestly, if somebody could have figured out how to run a 2mm axle, I'm sure it would have slid right through because nobody would have noticed.
Okay. So, all right. So, because the production race ended on Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay. So Monday morning, the protest is denied, and we start the post race tech. So then I think on Tuesday, they got Tim from JK and Recheck involved because Tim is the manufacturer of the he has a chassis manufactured in China, and Recheck was the designer, and I guess somewhat involved with the Chinese when they made the tooling or engineering of that stuff. So Tim claimed that the J-bar holes were not reamed or drilled from the factory. And Recheck said, yes, they are, because when they put the pan and the chassis together and the J-bars in, if the J-bars don't fit in, then they have to drill that or ream it to get the J-bar in to assemble the chassis and ship it to the United States. So I don't know at this point, I don't remember what James told me, or maybe he wasn't clear, but I don't know who all was in that room. I'm sure that Graham was in there.
Yeah.
Recheck, Tim. I don't know if Chris
The
Radish was in.
entire race jury was in there.
Okay, the entire race jury's in there. How many was on the race jury?
I think 5 people.
Okay, and they're not delegates.
No.
They're not supposed to be racers. They're not supposed to be racing in the event, correct?
Basically how it worked was you had the technical director, and then there were the 2 race directors that were in the race jury.
Okay.
And then each one, there might have been 6 people. Each one picked somebody that was at the event to also be in the race jury.
Okay. So we have a room with Tim, Recheck, Graham, and 6 other people.
Mm-hmm.
I know that
tiny room too.
And they had James come in at times, and Recheck inspected each car, 80 cars, not knowing whose car was who, or whose car was whose. But I would have to think when he got to his car in Nepal, he would know his car. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, this one's not illegal at all.
Okay. And I'm not saying that happened, but he might have handed his car to Graham, or maybe Graham said, I respected his car. But anyway, he's inspecting.
Multiple people inspected the cars as well. It wasn't just Recheck.
So he's inspecting the cars, and he explains to them that if you look in the hole, you can tell if they've been drilled, because there will be swirl marks, because the drill only goes down one way.
Yep.
And there would be kind of a drill burr on the back side or the bottom side of however they're drilling that you would feel. Like you drill through a piece of metal, you've got a burr, something hanging on. Yeah. So he showed them that, and then, like if you grind, you won't see that. You won't see any swirl mark in there. So they go through the 80 cars, and he makes a pile of illegal cars and a pile of illegal cars. And James said that his car, from that inspection, was put in the legal pile. Second place car was put in the illegal pile. So now we've got 30 cars to disqualify. And how are we going to do this? So they got the delegates involved, and some abstained, some voted yes, some voted no. And it was basically like, we don't know what to do.
The delegate meeting, the vote went, they had a delegate meeting on Wednesday night, and the delegate meeting went through, and they said that no disqualifications were to take place in the vote, and that the race results would stand.
Okay. Yep. So then
here comes Thursday.
So then there's arguments about, well, we seen him do this and so did that, and it was
big whodunit.
It was going to be more protests.
Yeah.
More guys were going to just keep protesting until I guess they got to first place, and then somebody would protest them, and it would just never end. So they went from protest or throw out the 30 or throw out nobody, and they chose to throw out nobody at that point. So then I'm not exactly clear on what happened, but they felt they needed to disqualify somebody, supposedly. So James technically got disqualified for grinding somewhere else other than what you've seen on the video.
Yeah.
Because they found ground marks elsewhere. And then Alex pulled his chassis out because it was obvious he ground on the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third car, the body was mounted below the chassis pan, and whoever's car it was, they just took a cutoff wheel or a sanding disc and, ground on the body, but then accidentally hit the chassis and put a mark in it, and they got disqualified. So 3 cars were disqualified when it was all said and done. So James just felt the whole way it was handled and everything was just a big farce.
Well, you missed a really big point of the conversation, though.
Well, maybe I didn't, but please go on.
Well, they announced that all of those cars were going to be disqualified.
Right.
Because they didn't announce that on Wednesday. They just said nobody would be disqualified.
Right.
Well, then Thursday morning comes around, and they said that after the F1 race, there would be an announcement for the 124th production race. So we're all happy. We're like, who won the race? Who won the race? Who do you think won the race? Who do you think won the race? Taking bets. I'll buy you a beer if this guy won the race. Back and forth.
Right.
And so then Chris Radisich walks up to the microphone, and he has a piece of paper with a list of numbers on it, and he reads out all of those team numbers, and he says all of these teams are disqualified. 29 teams. The entire place
erupted.
It was nuts. We were trying to practice for 124th Eurosport, and the marshal couldn't marshal the donut because there was just a mob of people right there.
Okay.
Right there. And so everybody was forced to move away so that we could finish practice. There was people pissed off here, there, everywhere. We're all going around trying to figure out who got disqualified, where we would finish if everybody gets disqualified, and all this stuff. And personally, it didn't affect me very much, except I went up a bunch of spots. So
right,
let them all get disqualified. Get a few more points, but yeah, it was bad.
Okay, so it was very obvious in talking to a lot of people that there was great inconsistency. Because I asked James, I said, so why did you grind that out? Were you trying to get more movement? Or he says, no, I was trying to get my J-bar in. Because when I get my J-bar in, then the chassis was bound up. Kind of like what we talked about on the show last week, Shane.
Yeah.
And he said there was a great inconsistency. Some cars were nice. Some needed a little massaging.
Yep.
And to be fair to everybody, the cars need to have the same movement or as close as possible. You can't give a guy a chassis that's bound up and the other guys get to run a chassis that's moving. So, I told James, I said, well, maybe next year, before they send the chassis over, they need to qualify all the chassis. Put them on a drill press and drill them all out, and then coat them with something. So if anybody touches, so if anybody touches any of those holes, they can say the coating's missing. You've done something to this.
Yeah. So what we were talking about during this entire situation, and it actually got voted on and was approved, I believe, is that there will be a production committee, like a rules committee.
Yeah, I seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. So then a bunch of people are going to come together and talk over the internet about what rules, and vote on how to make the rules better for production, this, that, what you can do, what you can't do. Because, like, there were proposals that said allow grinding and milling on the chassis. So I'm going to take my milling machine with me across the world, and I'm going to mill down my chassis to 20 thousandths. That's legal. You can't say, you have to be really specific.
Right. So then there was another problem with guys would get cars and their oil lights wouldn't even fit in the rear holes.
Yep. Same
so
thing.
You had to tweak on those to get your oil lights to go in. So like I said, all the center sections should be qualified in the oil lights and where the J-bar goes through, and also with the front, with the pan. Like, it just needs to be done. Like,
and like
qualified.
And like, and we were talking about it, and I was talking to Matt Bruce about it because Matt is the one that's organizing the event for Mike Isles.
Right.
Like, he's the one putting everything together. And he said he's going to get all the chassis early, go through them all, make sure everything's perfect on them, have some sort of a coating put on them, and then mark them with and engrave them with the numbers or something.
Well, I understand there's a push to go to laser cut or EDM cut spring steel chassis that would then be soldered together by one person or whatever, and then nickel plated, and nothing can be adjusted or moved on those chassis. Yeah,
there was a lot of talk about racing open 12 instead of production for the team race.
And that would eliminate all the inconsistencies of a production chassis. But now you get away from production because
it's not a production anymore.
Right.
So a lot of people were like talking about doing it, and it would be fun if you added another class as open 12, which
where do you fit that in at?
Exactly. You can't fit it in, but it would be fun if you could, I mean, it'd be a fun extra class. I mean, you're not going to.
Right. And I've talked to Chris about this and some other people. I mean, I understand why they have the production race. It's like it's a warm-up race, and the host gets to make some money off the sale of the handout parts because it was $250 to enter that race, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a lot of money. I mean, that's a lot of money. And then, but at the same, it's like, well, it opens up for people to come and get points.
But here's the big issue with production. Okay. It might be the warm-up race, quote-unquote, to the Worlds for the Eurosports, but it's the best way to get points. And so it's turned into the most serious race of the week.
Right.
And that's where these problems come from, is that people want to do as well as possible in production.
Sure.
Because that gets them up the rankings higher.
But the thing is, one thought is you could do away with production, and you could increase the entries in the other three classes to 150 drivers. And those people who come to run just the production race, and a lot of guys can only run the production race because they can't get in the other classes.
Yeah.
Now there's no production race, but they can get in and race all three of the other classes and get their points.
Yeah.
I mean, you can look at it like 6 different ways probably.
Yeah.
But they got it. I mean, production's like the nightmare class.
Production is also one of people's favorite classes. So it's
I understand that too.
Like if they got rid of it, a lot of people would be angry.
I'm going to ask you a question I've asked about 6 other guys. Walker, you can be 124th production ISRA world champion, or you can be 124th ISRA Eurosport champion. Which one do you want?
Eurosport, of course.
That's what everybody said. They even said they'd take a 32nd scale championship over the production.
Oh, yeah. I'd take an F1 championship by far over production because it's a team race.
Right.
But the big thing is that production just means so much that people put a lot more time into production, trying to get production well.
Well, you have to, because in the other classes, you can do whatever you want to your chassis.
Exactly.
Okay? In that production class, you can only do so much.
And there's so much more setup to do whenever it comes to those production cars. Because, like, 124th Eurosport, you put the chassis together, put a guide flag on it, put the motor in it and some tires, and then you go run it, and then you change tires, then you go run it again, then you go change tires, and you go run it again. That's about all you do.
Right.
And then you try, and then once you find tires that work, then you try your motors, and then there you go.
Right.
Whereas in production, you got to get the car to handle good with that set of tires, and so you have a ton of chassis work to do.
Right.
And so people spent tons of time working on their chassis. I spent a lot of time working on mine. Hell, I didn't even build one.
I remember when we went in '97 the first time, watching the Czechs bang on their champion cars for 6 hours.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, it didn't make a bit of difference.
Hey.
Because they got beat by 2 cars that weren't even banged on. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, it's my favorite, one of my favorites. I'm not going to say it's my favorite. That'd be a lie. It's one of my favorite flat track classes.
Right.
Because the cars don't handle that well, but they handle good.
Right.
They don't have a lot of downforce, and they have enough horsepower to make them fun to drive.
Sure.
But the problem just comes where if it's super spec like it is, you're going to have these issues. Before, whenever it wasn't handout, they were suspecting.
Oh, yeah.
There were people heat treating the chassis, doing this, doing that, doing everything.
Right.
So they went to handout, and now we have this issue where people are doing stuff to them at the track, you know?
Right. Well, every time they come up with a solution, it creates another problem.
Exactly. And that's how it'll always be.
It's like I told Shane last week. I said, what I do is make everybody builds their car. And they throw them in a box, and everyone goes up and pulls a car out of the box. Mm-hmm. As long as they don't pull their car out, that's the car they got to race.
I'm pulling out Horkeys every time, buddy. What color lead wire you got, Horkey? I mean, you put together the biggest junker ever, like bend it all to pieces.
Yeah, but you might go up there and someone else might do the same thing, and you'd grab that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not the solution. It's just like a joke.
Yeah, it would have been funny, but no, you can't. And somebody else said, well, if you want to be true production, have everybody run out of the box cars. You just pull them out of the box and put them on the track and race them.
They're ready to run, so they're not ready to race.
Yeah.
All right, so what else you want to tell us about? Because we're getting short on time here, but what was your biggest concern, I guess, going into the race, and was it really that big of a concern? Like, what was you worried about the most?
Honestly, what I was worried about the most is getting cars, to be completely honest, because I had some stuff,
right,
but I was expecting to get some other cars there, and so I was kind of, concerned. Hopefully, and then I got some, and then I was fine, but up until then it was bad. But I will say the worst thing about the entire race and about the entirety of last week, the practice week, it was fine. But last week we had the issue of we would race, we would finish the mains, clean the track, and start practice for the next race.
Right.
Well, then after that practice for the next race that night, everything would close. Then we'd start back up the next day and have like 3 rounds of practice and then qualify and race.
Right.
Well, overnight the track got so slick, it got really slick, and it had no glue on it anymore.
Right.
All the glue was gone.
Right.
And so the track was unbelievably terrible every day. Like, we would leave at night, come back the next day, and be 6 to 7 tenths slower.
Right.
Like, that's how bad the
But
track
see,
was.
when they sprayed the track and you ran it right away, you pulled all the stick out of the glue and you didn't put any rubber down, so you had no base to get traction.
Exactly.
They'd have been better off to glue the track, leave it sit overnight,
Yeah.
and then start the next day.
I mean, the thing is what they used to cut the glue whenever they put it on was brake cleaner.
Okay.
And it kind of confused me a little bit because brake cleaner leaves residue. So I was like, why are we using brake cleaner? But they were like, it's okay. And it worked fine at first. And they said they used it because it evaporated quicker. So for F1, they decided on the fly to just spray the track like in the middle of practice. So they stopped practice, they sprayed the track, and then as soon as they got done spraying the track, turned it back on and they ran again while it was still wet. And so then the track was awful after that, of course.
Yeah.
Kind of like that video with Jeff Gordon.
Again, they never laid any rubber down on it.
No.
They never built a base on it.
Yeah, so it was the worst for 124th Eurosport. So because we only ran 2 heats of practice that morning.
Right.
And so then we went to qualify, and the first I'd say 75 to 80 qualifiers had 0 chance of doing well in qualifying.
Okay.
Because unless they had the grippiest tires known to man,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple of guys did find that tire that actually had grip on the track.
Right.
As soon as you hit the gas, you just spin the whole straight.
So let me ask you this question. So let's say they finished 132nd F1.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say they didn't clean the track. They just went right into 124th Eurosport. Practice, all that. Do you think the track would have been better because it had some rubber on it?
Once 124th lines started to get laid down,
Okay.
I feel like it would have been, because 132nd F1 doesn't put down much rubber.
Right.
And so, but what was talked about and I don't know if it was proposed or not, was to every night after the main run on the track like it was, just go ahead and practice on it, and then clean it and glue it in the morning, and then finish practice and then tech. So then the track's good. You know that the track's going to be good.
Right.
Going into qualifying.
So, okay. So did you have a temperature and humidity gauge with you?
No, but other people did.
How humid was it in there?
Very.
Yeah, that's another issue.
The problem was that they weren't running the AC, of course,
right,
because we're in Britain. They had 2 big AC units, and if they would have ran it the whole time, it would have been fine. Right. They didn't run it the first week, and so then they couldn't run it the second week because there was dust on it.
Right.
And so then if they ran it, there would be dust all over everything. And so the problem we had was there was a door on this end where we were pitting, where USA was, and then there was a door on the other end of the building by the panel. And then there was another door where the Czechs were sitting that led to the bathrooms and the tech and everything else. So the door where we sat was almost always open because it was so hot inside.
Right.
So it was like a 10-degree difference from where we were sitting to the racetrack. It was a huge difference. You sat there and you were cold. You walk over to the racetrack, you're sweating.
Right.
That's how big of a difference it was.
Right.
And the humidity from one side of the track to the other,
right,
and the temperature from one side of the track to the other was completely different.
So, okay, go on.
It wasn't the weather inside wasn't controlled very well, and that led to a lot of issues as well.
Right. So we're going to wrap this up, but the last question I'm going to ask you for this week is, you've been there, you've raced. So going back just real quick, I mean, the conditions are the same for everybody.
Yeah.
But sometimes you got to work on improving that. So you've been there. You went over the first time. You've been there. You've done it. If you were to go back next month, same event, what would you do differently?
Well, I would bring more 124th Eurosport bodies.
Okay.
B, I would bring less F1 bodies. And C, the most important one, I would have run a lot more tires, a lot more exotic tires.
Okay.
Because, like, it was hard for me to get tires in the couple of months I had building up to it.
Right.
And plus, I didn't know of all of the rubbers that were out there. I didn't know B52 existed, for example, and that was the best rubber for 124th Eurosport. Go me. And like Klingon was really good rubber for 132nd F1, stuff like that. And I didn't have it. I have Klingon now. I have this. I have that. And so if I had all this rubber before I went, it would have been a lot better for me.
Right.
To have it all, to test it. And I probably would have ran like Klingon on my 124th Eurosport because that would be the grippiest thing I had. But instead, I ended up running Herman's in 124th Eurosport, and I just didn't quite have the forward bite that I needed.
Okay. And
the big thing is I wish I could have got my hands on some dang Primo Piranhas. Because those puppies, strap them puppies on the car, you go 3/10 quicker. Guaranteed. There was a tub of them, and I should have bought some, but they were bought in like an hour. It was unbelievable.
There you go. So tires. We always talk about tires.
Toyas. You got to get the Toyas.
Tars. Goodyear Eagles.
Get you some of them there Tars. Need them there.
All right. You got anything to say, Shane? You've been sitting over there soaking it all in. He says thumbs up.
Yep. Good. Ready to go racing. Lock it in.
Okay. So what's the secret word of the show going to be this week?
Eurosport. Eurosport.
All right.
No, Eurosport. You have to type it Eurosport because that's how my dad says it.
EURA? Eura?
Eurosport. URA sport.
Oh, you are. Okay. Eurosport.
Eurosport.
That's it.
Get them there tires on the Eurosport.
Okay. Well, if you're going racing this weekend, good luck, have fun, be safe. Until next week, it'll be episode number 115. Walker, you going to be back next week? Yeah, you're going to be, because the track's not open on Wednesdays now, so he's
hey, taking next week off, boys.
He has no excuse. See you next week.
I might have an excuse.
No, you won't. All right, guys.
Good night.